Hello, birthday girl. Graham's back. Let's do chapter 19, Variables. It was difficult to tell whether the shaking in the balloon's wicker gondola was from the wind outside or the enraged girl inside. The space was too small to pace in, but Ada felt as though her entire body had been scooped out and filled with tigers, pacing in cages made of her hands and ribs and head. So she shook and growled, the tigers helping her out in that way at least. Peeves was a spy. She had thought he was useless except for providing the odd book, and obviously he was clever enough to be a spy and had been hiding this cleverness the whole time. He could have been interesting, useful. The thought frustrated her tremendously. And Mary had betrayed her by keeping secrets. Peeves and Mary had been in, cahoots. They had been in cahoots, laughing at her over their little shared secret. Perhaps Mary was a spy too, who had sent her here anyway, to share her tutor. Ada realized she didn't know. How? Could it have been her mother? Ada growled and added her mother to the list of perpetrators. Her mother, who had left her in the Marylebone house with Miss Coverlet, who had abandoned her, and with Mr. Franklin, who at least never bothered her, and with Miss Cumberland, who... That was interesting, at least. She had remembered her maid's name without even thinking about it. Ada knew she wasn't good with names that she hadn't read. Maybe. No, she was going to make the Peebles cannon big enough to blast the lot of them clear across London, and they could land in a heap on her mother's doorstep in the country, and they could all be merrily dreadful together. She took out a small notebook and a pencil to clear her thoughts. In her notebook, she made a small lowercase p for Peebles. Followed that with a comma, she made another small letter, this time M for Mary. She put a bracket around the two letters. Thinking, she added an A for herself, and even a small C for Charles, the boy who wasn't officially there, but who had placed the advertisement in the newspaper and brought their mail. Above the bracket, she made a big W for Wollstonecraft, and then thought to add an F for Mr. Franklin, who had helped by locking Peebles in the distillery closet. This little alphabet soup, bordered by curly brackets, calmed the tigers in the cages of her limbs. She began another cluster of letters, an R1 for Rebecca Verdigris, and an R2 for Rosie Sparrow, the maid, and a B for Beau, and an A2 for Abernathy, and an L for Lady Verdigris. Above all this, she placed a large V. Obviously, there were some things that didn't fit in the brackets, so she made a new grouping, an A3 for the acorn itself, and a B2 for the fish-smelling book, a FRH1, 2, and 3 for the men in fuzzy red hats, and an FM for fishmonger, even an O for the omnibus that had nearly squished her flat in the road. The guard, G, in Newgate Prison. With each collection of brackets, she simplified all the thoughts in her legs down to manageable groups, like variables in an equation. With a red pencil, she began to make little circles around Rebecca and Beau, around a forgotten and hastily remembered H for Colonel Havisham, Rebecca's dead uncle, who left Rebecca the acorn in the first place, and then a line connecting Havisham with Abernathy, and then another connecting Havisham with his sister, Lady Verdigris. She put an X through the guard in red pencil. He seemed to be over with. An arrow through the three men with the red fezzes leading where. The exercise made her calm enough to think. Each line and letter made her breathe easier, like emptying a jumble drawer on the floor, sorting out piles, and only putting back the necessary things. And there you can see all her thinking represented by numbers and letters. She could breathe again. She had her books, and she had hardly seen Mr. Babbage since all this Wollstonecraft detective agency business started. Surely her mother wouldn't really prevent him from visiting. It was the Baroness, no slouch at mathematics herself, who had encouraged Ada's love of math in the first place. Would Mr. Babbage side with her mother and stay away? Could Miss Coverlet come back? Could things just go back to the way they were before? Ada calmed herself. She still had her balloon. She still had her books. Didn't need Mary or anyone, or even Mr. Babbage if he was going to be horrid and listen to her mother. She still had her books. Books could tell her everything she needed to know. Like mesmerism, she thought. If she could find a book about mesmerism, then that could prove that she didn't need anyone. Books stayed put and would not abandon her like Miss Coverlet, or that treacherous Peeves, or Mary, or anyone in the chart of variables she had made. She grabbed her notebook, popped the hatch, and slid down the thick ropes to the roof, the attic, and the library. She still had her books. Chapter 20. Nest. Anna Cumberland had woken, washed, and dressed before dawn. She stirred up the fire in the kitchen to make tea and warm a basin for Lady Ada, and saw to her breakfast. There were lists for shopping and schedules for cleaning, putting away the fall linens and getting out the winter linens. There were bills from the florist, from the butcher, from the grocer, and the newspaper and the fishmonger. Bills for paper and candles and coal and soap and polish, all to be paid by Mr. Franklin in the Baroness's accounts, and all to be sorted first by Anna. As the thin sun tinted the sky from dark gray to a lighter gray, she fetched coal and kindling and began setting the fires above stairs. When Anna entered the library, her first thought was that of burglary. Every book was off the shelves, opened and upturned and stacked a twist. The drawers were pulled from the reading desks, and cupboards were all hanging open. But there, sprawled upon an odd and uncomfortable nest of books, slept Ada herself. No burglar, just a perfectly ordinary 11-year-old girl genius who happened to have built herself a fort out of every single book in the library. Look at that. She surrounded herself by them because they bring her such comfort in a time of stress. Mesmerism, said Ada sleepily. Beg your pardon, Lady Ada? Asked Anna. Mesmerism, the practice of inducing a mental state in a subject of which the subject may not be unaware. I'm sorry, Lady Ada, but I'm still not. It means, said Ada, waking up, that if you use mesmerism on someone, you can make them do something without their even knowing they're doing it. Uncanny influence. Terribly handy. Explains everything. Does it, Lady Ada? It does, Miss Cumberland. Anna was so shocked at Ada's remembering her name that she nearly dropped the coal shuttle. Right, continued Ada, rubbing her eyes. Much to do. First, congratulations. You want to be a lady's maid, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, but you are one, starting now. Thank you, but I think the Baroness isn't here. Not until after Christmas. That's what she wrote to Peeves. Until then, I am the one with the lady in front of my name, and I'm, like the captain of a ship. In command? Offered Anna. That's it. I'm in command, so I'll do what I want. I need you to take these envelopes to the boot polish factory and find a boy named Charles. I suspect, Lady Ada, and begging your pardon, there may be several boys named Charles at the boot polish factory. Ask for the one who reads. There can't be a lot of those, and if there are, so much the better. I bet there's just one in particular, though. At once, Lady Ada. Too many variables. That was the problem all along. I wanted to turn everything into numbers and feed them into the bleh. The bleh is the Byron lignotactic engine, finished Anna. How do you know about the bleh? Asked Ada, accusingly. I dust it. I suppose you do. But anyway, it didn't work. At first I thought I had the wrong kinds of variables. People, maddeningly hard to quantify. But then I realized that wasn't the problem at all. No? Anna ventured. No, I had too many variables. Two of those variables were actually the same variable, so I revised the equation and then it all made sense. Ada was truly excited. You seem truly excited, Lady Ada, said Anna cautiously. Of course I'm truly excited. I've been scooped out and filled with tigers. I didn't like it at first, but now I see that it's a good thing, a very good thing. And once I knew what that silly word meant, mesmerism, offered Anna. Precisely. Once I had that, well, it just fell into place. So that means envelopes. Why are you still here? Again, begging your pardon, Lady Ada, but you haven't given them to me yet. Ah, well, they're around here somewhere. She dug through her nest of upturned books, graphs, and note scraps. Here. She handed a fistful of sealed envelopes, only slightly the worse for wear for having been slept on, each addressed to a different person. Now get out, said Ada, in a cheerful way that seemed to erase all the anger she had ever said with it. She said it in a way that sounded more like, go on, unwrap your present on Christmas morning. She said it in a way that sounded like, let's finally have some fun around here on a spring day. Anna nodded, and a little overwhelmed by all this talk of mesmerism and variables and tigers and envelopes, and set off to find her coat and bonnet, leaving the last fires unlit. Let's read 21 also. I suppose you're all wondering is the title of chapter 21. Ooh, it's kind of long. Let's do it. Peeves held the urgent, personal, and clandestine note in his hands. He knew it was all such because the envelope read, urgent, personal, clandestine. The note within had summoned him to a very well-to-do estate just north of Primrose Hill, and despite his best efforts at ironing the paper between his palms and his knee, it still bore the marks of having been slept on. As he neared his destination, he recalled seeing a series of diagrams on the drawing room floor depicting some sort of explosive device labeled Peeves Cannon, and briefly wondered if this summons might be some sort of trap. His fears were set aside when he saw Mary getting out of the carriage on the other side of the road. While he had no doubt that Lady Ada was capable of constructing a cannon, he doubted very much she'd ever shoot Mary out of one, despite her anger the day before. Mary seemed as surprised to see Peeves as he was to see her. Crossing the street, she took his hands, and he made a smart bow. But her eyes did not meet his. She was looking past him. He spun around to catch sight of 3 red felt hats ducking behind a hedgerow, as though someone were juggling large red cans, and suddenly dropped them. Miss Godwin, said Peeves, his attention turned to his former student. Do you know what this is about? I haven't the foggiest, I'm afraid, answered Mary. But this is Verdigris Manor, and we, that is to say, Ada and I, as the Wollstonecraft detectives, had been working on a case here. Then we'd best get inside. Just as Mary's carriage pulled away, another took its place. Ada clambered out, followed by Mr. Franklin, who more or less unfolded himself from the black coach like something crawling out of a beetle. Mary could see that Anna remained inside. I keep mixing up Anna and Ada. Envelopes, good, declared Ada. Let's go. Go where? Go where, Ada? Asked Mary. Inside. I've solved the case, the whole thing. Mary had never seen Ada this excited. Are you sure you're feeling all right? Asked Peeves, concerned by this sudden change in Ada's mood. Ada leaned forward to whisper loudly to Peeves, I'm more than all right. I'm full of tigers. With that, she practically skipped up the stairs to the verdigris door and let herself in uninvited. Mr. Franklin followed close behind. With a shrug, both Peeves and Mary completed the train. The Verdigris clan, including Beau and Mr. Abernathy, had assumed the same spots as on their first meeting with the Wollstonecraft girls. Rebecca was seated on the right, with Beau standing behind her. Lady Verdigris was at the head of the long dark table, with Abernathy sort of hovering at her side. Ada saw brackets hovering in the midair around both sets of people, with a V above the Verdigris clans and a W above herself and her friends. Ada took a breath. I suppose you're all wondering why I've brought you here. I wasn't wondering, said Lady Verdigris. I received a note saying it was for a school project. I wasn't wondering either, added Rebecca. I received a note saying that you had new information on the missing acorn and Rosie's innocence. I wasn't wondering at all, said Beau. I received a note that there was a matter of urgent, personal, and clandestine business. Well, I certainly wasn't wondering, said Mr. Abernathy. I received a note saying that you had an enormous fortune and required some advice on how best to manage it. And seeing as how I'm so rich, I might be able to help you. So none of you are wondering? Asked Ada, disappointed. I'm wondering, said Mary encouragingly, as am I, even though I too received a note about urgent, personal, and clandestine business, added Peeves, in hopes of making Ada feel better. Well, here it is. Beau stole the acorn, said Ada with certainty. Ada, cried Mary, we agreed to let Beau explain himself first. I assure you, said Beau calmly, I did no such thing. Honestly, said Rebecca, this can't be true. Ada steeled herself. Beau took the acorn. He just didn't know he took it. It was in the book. Havisham's book. The acorn has the power of mesmerism. You can use the acorn to make people do things they wouldn't normally do, and then not even remember they did it. Uncanny influence, she added with a nod to Mary. There was an awkward and uncomfortable silence, so Ada added, "That's what mesmerism means." "So you're suggesting the acorn made me steal it and I don't remember?" asked Bo. "Rosie told us she saw you take it," Ada explained. "She said you were carrying it and staring at it like it was something from your dreams. You were mesmerized. It explains everything." "No, I'm quite sure it does not," said Rebecca. "Even though it means that Rosie is innocent, as I've said all along, how could the acorn make itself be stolen?" "Aha!" exclaimed Ada. "That was the really fun part, taking out the variables. I had too many." "Vegetables?" asked Abernathy. "Variables," corrected Ada. "Part of the problem. I thought the problem had a certain number of parts, but really it had fewer parts. It's like putting a puzzle together with an extra piece. It doesn't fit. I had one puzzle piece disguised as two pieces." "That doesn't make any," started Mary. "I know, sorry, full of tigers," continued Ada. "I was trying to put all the pieces together and, oh, never mind. Look, Rebecca didn't steal the acorn because she already had it. Lady Verdigris didn't steal the acorn because she had it before and could have kept it. Rosie didn't steal the acorn because she saw Bo Datchery take it when he was mesmerized. Plus, there was a prison guard and 3 men in fuzzy hats and a fishmonger. That's where my secret weapon comes in." "Secret weapon?" asked Peebs, suddenly recalling the Peebs canon. "Anna Cumberland, my maid," answered Ada. Mary clapped her hands with delight that Ada had finally learned Anna's name. Just then Anna entered the room. Abernathy began a sudden fit of coughing and turned away from the door. "Gracious," said Lady Verdigris, "this is a most unusual school project." "Miss Cumberland," said Ada smartly, ignoring Lady Verdigris, "do you recognize anyone in this room?" "I do, Lady Ada. I recognize Miss Verdigris seated here." "You recognize Rebecca from when she came to ask us for help?" added Ada. "Yes, Lady Ada, plus one other person." "Plus one other person, and whom else?" Ada said, making Mary happy with the M in whom. "Do you recognize?" Anna pointed to Abernathy. "Mr. Flintwinch, the new fishmonger." Abernathy gasped in pretended horror. "You are mistaken, miss. I am not a fishmonger. I am Mr. Abernathy, and I am very rich." "Oh, you're the fishmonger, all right," said Ada. "When you handed me Havisham's book, it smelled fishy, exactly the same fishy smell that was on your fish knife which you left at my house." "This is ridiculous," protested Abernathy. Lady Verdigris looked at him sternly. "Havisham brought home the acorn of Ankara from Turkey, where he was on an adventure. Only it was a national treasure, which means you can't really bring it home without stealing it. And I think he stole it with you," accused Ada, looking straight at Abernathy. "There's a picture of you in the book, but after you helped him steal it, he gave it to his sister, Lady Verdigris, and then left it to his niece Rebecca in his will. So you pretended to be a rich friend of Havisham's, only you're not rich. You just wanted to be close to the Verdigris family so you could steal the acorn once it came out of the safe." "At my birthday party," said Rebecca. "Exactly," said Ada. "Abernathy knew about the acorn's power of mesmerism, and he used it to make Bo steal it from him. He only needed a minute alone with Bo and the necklace to make it work. Mr. Datchery, do you recall such a time?" Bo looked startled. "Well, now that you mention it, there was—" "Of course you do," said Ada, satisfied. "Moving on. What would my brother, a gentleman, be doing in the company of a fishmonger?" asked Lady Verdigris. "He's only a scoundrel who's pretending to be a fishmonger. He was a sailor when he knew your brother. He's dressed like one in the picture with Havisham. And then, when he saw his chance to get the acorn, he became a very rich gentleman," declared Ada. "And he pretended to be a fishmonger after our visit so that he could sneak into the house and snoop about. Whole place smelled fishy. As a sailor, he could get fish quick as anything." "Absurd," said Abernathy, who stuck his finger in his shirt collar as though he was suddenly becoming uncomfortable with its ill fit. "But why," asked Mary, "would Mr. Abernathy just run away? Why wouldn't he just run away once he had the pendant? Don't criminals usually do that?" He would have, but he's being followed by 3 men in red fezzes. He has to find the right place and time to make his escape, answered Ada. Which would be now, said Geoffrey Abernath, the Flintwinch fishmonger, as he ran past Anna, skated through the entrance hall, and bolted out the front door. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my goodness, it's so good. I never thought it could be Abernathy. Wow. All right, let's stop here, my lovely. I love you.